and welcome to another one of these posters of these never-ending projects which I've taken on, which is my mk2 Jaguar wide-body two-door coupe and the Land Rover 101 forward control, which I've been splitting, as those who have been watching and are watching will obviously know. So what have I been doing? Well, in this weather, not much because it's burning me up, but anyway, put the complaining to one side. What have I been doing? Well, I've been working on the Jag exhaust, and I'm going to show you a bit of that, of what I can show you, because it's on the car, so it is quite difficult to show, but I'm going to try my best so you can see what I've got. And it's a squeeze in there. Yeah, like I say, I make it hard for myself. Anyway, Land Rover. So we'll start with Land Rover because this is where we are at the moment. So obviously I've told you that my son comes every Saturday and we do the Land Rover. That's his job with me. So that's why I do these Land Rover videos as well as the Jag ones. So what we've been doing, well, the Land Rover itself, we haven't really done anything on that. I'm still designing the wings for the side for the wheel storages, and I'm going to use some linear motor drive actuators for that. I've just got to work out the actual force required to make sure I've got it right, because I don't want to buy a linear actuator and find that it won't pull it up. So I've got to make sure that it's right that. But anyway, so I'm on with that, designing that on CAD, and I will show you a video of that at some point where I am, because it's still quite basic. Because obviously, once I've got worked out my positions of the levers to actuate these wings, as it were, which the wheels are going to be mounted to, once I can work out the force required to pull it up and down, and obviously I need to know the proper weight of a wheel with the tyre on. I'm guesstimate it's about 40 to 50 kilos, but I'm not sure. So I'm going to weigh that as well, so I'm better acquainted with how much effort's required. So that's still ongoing, and like I say, I will show you that. So because I've not been able to do that, other bits and pieces I've been doing. So the winch. When I got the Land Rover, the winch wasn't on it, it was in the back. It did turn. It was a little bit jammed at first, and then it freed up and it turned. But I thought, because it was jammed, and it did look a bit scabby with rust and stuff on it, so I thought, I'll pull it down and I'll check everything over, and anything that's hammered, we'll replace it. So that's what we've been on with. And I'm glad they did, because these things are damned expensive. It's ridiculous. The whole thing, these toys, they're just the money that they're charging for these things, and bits and pieces from just mental. But I understand that people want them, and parts are becoming scarce, and so obviously that pushes up the price. So the winch, we pulled it down, as you can see, and I'll show you over there when I've finished explaining what we've got here. We pulled it down. I found a couple of issues with it, nothing significant really. The chain is okay, as you can see, quite happily moves. There were a few little bits of rust on the rollers in places, but it's perfectly quite fine. The gear, the driver gear, which this fastens up, and the big one was perfectly fine. There was no rust damage on that at all. So it must have been condensation that had got in there, and it was just settling on these parts that had been stood for so long. So the chain, I'm not going to replace the chain. There's nothing wrong with the chain. I cleaned the bits of rust that was on the rings off, but it wasn't covered. It was just bits and pieces, so I did that. I did find a couple of bearings that were damaged. The seals are gone, and so I've replaced those. And when I got into it, the main planetary gearbox, reduction gearbox, this is the outer ring, which, let me just get this, with this assembly sits inside. That was perfectly fine. There's no rust damage really in that. It was a bit low on oil, but there was no rust damage on it as such. But I did find some marring on the needle bearings. So this is one of the planetary gears. So there's 4 obviously inside of it. And the needle bearings in there were 2 sets where there was some marring on the actual inner race that goes in. So I managed to source some needles, some new needle bearings for it. So 2 were good and 2 were buggered. Also, there are some spacers that go either side, there and there, to stop it rubbing on this body. Now these, I don't know if you'll be able to see that right well, but anyway, this washer is made out, it's a fibre, it's a hard fibre washer. You normally find these on banjo bolts. So I tried finding a fibre washer this shape, well this diameter I should say, internal, externally, and the thickness. Couldn't find anything at all. And I can't find anybody, anywhere, that do parts for these. Absolutely none. So I had to make some. So at work, I machined some out of nylon. So we've got some black nylon bar. So I don't know if you're able to see. So I machined these up. These are 1.75mm wide. I can't remember what, I think it's 20 and 35 respectively, ID and OD. And then what I did was, with the original ring, I marked onto those and then just cut them, filed them out. And so I did 8 of them, so there's 2 per unit, and they just sit on there and on there like that, and they just keep this gear away from that there. So that was that. So like I say, no real damage there. The rest of it, O-rings, big O-ring which sits on this gear, this outer gear sits around that. They were buggered, which was obvious anyway. So I managed to, there's a company in, I think they're in Sheffield, just down the road from where I live. I think they're called Simply Bearings, and that's not an advertisement for the company. They've not in any way asked me to do this, but they've been good enough, you know, with what they supply and that, and so I suppose they're worth a shout if no else, even though I don't get note from it. But yeah, so O-rings, got O-rings from there, and so there's a pair for that to seal, so the 2 plates, which I'll show you down there when we go down there. And then finally, well, there's this hold on a second, V-ring, this patent V-ring. This sits on this here. Now this is something to do, it's some kind of locking clutch type mechanism, I think. This fits on the output, and where is it? I've lost it now. Oh, here it is. This bicycle cog. I thought somebody bodged this on, but it's not. It's actually supposed to be on. Well, that sits on there like that. So that's a bit damaged, but not, well, it's about 2/3 way through. It's cut there. You can see the rust in there. That's actually something's cut through it. But that's just a bicycle ring of something. But exactly what, I don't know. But anyway, I thought it was bodged, but it wasn't. But anyway, this ring sits around there, but it's broken. Well, I believe it sits around there. It was it all came apart when I pulled it apart. But I've also found at Simply Bearings they sell these V-rings. So I've got another one to order these. I didn't know at the time when I was ordering the rest of my stuff, but they do actually sell these. So that's that. Oh, and I polished up my my brass plate, which was on, and yeah, it's come up quite well. So that's that to do, to put back together. And best thing is I pulled it apart and didn't even take note of how me and my son were just ripping it apart, and we ended up with a load of bits, and it's like, you know, I've forgotten how it goes back together. So I've got to find a manual now to show how this thing goes back together. Otherwise it's going to be trial and error on lasty. On this winch, the take-up drum, which obviously takes up the cable, I learned through doing some research, because I need the take-up drum, and it's got another one of these apparently what this sits on, and it's adjustable, and the drum puts up a bit of tension driving from this, so it's got another cog, bicycle cog on it, which is a bit like that, and you adjust it and it puts tension on the cable to go around the capstan, which is round there. So the cable comes around the capstan, then comes up to the take-up drum. Well, that take-up drum puts a certain amount of tension on the cable, and that has to be adjusted to the vehicle when it's actually running. I think it's 2.5 ton is the pull force, so it has to be adjusted to that apparently. So anyway, that's really rusted pretty bad, and I don't have the take-up drum. I do have one of the guards sat at the back, but the front guard, and there's a third bit that goes at the back. That's all missing, so I've got to try and source that, which is going to be fun, especially with the cost of this stuff. Because I found a company that got a brand new winch. I think they had two, and they wanted I think it was £5,000 just for a winch. Anyway, just crazy. And the second-hand one was 2,700, I think, for a winch, and that wasn't including the PTO. Just mental, absolutely mental. But anyway, it's what it is, isn't it? When people want them and they're rare, and nobody's making them, fixing them or anything. It's people pay, don't they, if they want it, to keep it standard. Anyway, luckily I did have the PTO, which I showed in another video, which I put in, and the prop shaft, the little prop shaft, which was on the UJs. I thought I was going to struggle with those. And the serial numbers was on the UJ joint itself. Even though I went on the website, who made the UJ, they didn't have it registered on their listings, so I had to go by measurements, and I got one of the measurements wrong and I couldn't find it. And then when I went back over and mic'd it up, the number, like I say, it was a crazy size, and that's why I got it wrong. Anyway, I found it, Triumph Spitfire and stuff like that apparently has the same UJ. So it is actually a common UJ to get, which was lucky for me, because I put one was okay-ish, the other one was buggered as well. So anyway, so my son rebuilt the UJ. I cut these nylon spacers for the planetary gears, and this driver gear also had a fibre washer that went in there that were buggered as well. So I machined one of those up that sits in there, and then that goes inside there like that. So that's your driver from this, it goes onto there, and that's your driver for this. Anyway, so there's a big reduction. Under it can pull 2.5 ton. Anyway, so that's what we've got there. I've just got to finish the painting of all the other bits that's on the plates and everything else, and the gears and so forth. Not gears, capstan and the bearing mounts and stuff like that. We've got all bolts together to get this thing to be assembled proper. So we'll go down there, I'll show you what I've done there, which they're just in zinc primer. They're in zinc primer. I shot blasted them with a big shot blaster machine at work. So they went in there, shot blasted them, except for the other ones which had bearings going. I shot blasted those with a finer shot blast, because we've got a massive machine for shot blasting. and I didn't want to put those things that's got bearing faces, mount faces in, so I did those by hand. On his other machine it's a lot lighter. So anyway, we'll go down there and we'll have a look at those, and then we'll get on to the Jag. Okay, right, so here we are with all the other bits and pieces which make up this knock and winch for the 101. So, like I explained while I was over there were certain parts which I didn't put in the big shot blaster because the medium there's like, well, they're like nuclear flipping, bombs going off on steel, it's that coarse. So this one here, this is a driver, so there's some bearings that sit in there. So that was done in the shot blaster, it's got some fine media in. Same with the pulleys, which the cables go over, there's bearings that sit inside here. So those was in the fine shot blaster, so there's that, and that, because obviously that goes onto the spindle which comes out to drive the cable on. So that's the capstan, is that apparently. So that's that. And then we've got the plates to encapsulate the first reduction gear, which is with the chain, and that's this here. So that's this one. So the chain goes in it, 2 gears go in here, and so that's the other plate that goes onto there. So all these went in the into the big blaster, because there was quite a bit of heavy rust in places, and you won't be able to see this, but all around this edge here and some of this face here was quite eaten. So there's somewhat of a bit of a pit in there, but it's so thick it's not a detrimental thing to it. But anyway, that's where the chain goes in. Then it drives through into these plates here. Now these encapsulate the planetary reduction gear that sits into there, so it's trapped, and those O-rings which you saw, they seal against this, so that goes like that. So that's those, and that's it really. So these I painted last week and this week, and these just need sanding down now. Then they need some etch priming on where, obviously where it'll cut through to the steel, because I painted them all over just to catch all the areas where it's been bitten with rust, and the rest of it is just good steel. So I'll sand these down, just a light sanding, just to make them nice, and because it's brushed, is this with brush, get those nice. Then I'm going to spray them with black etch primer to make sure that when it will cut through. So we deal with that. Then we're going to use chassis black enamel to paint all this lot back up, and then it'd be a case of assembling it all back together. And like I say, I'll have to get an assembly chart or something to show how this thing goes together, because honestly we just pulled it apart. I didn't take any notes. I didn't feel it was necessary, because there are assembly. I think I've got the PDF, a digital PDF of this, and I'm sure it's in that. It shows you it exploded, so it'll be easy to put back together really. Cross fingers anyway. So yeah, so that's the Land Rover. That's what we've been doing with that. It has been going slow. Weather's just too hot. So yeah, so that's that. So let's go to the Jag, and you might not be able to see right much because it's in the Jag, but we'll look at the exhaust. I know you, Paul, has been religiously watching these, I think, and I'm grateful for it, and I'm grateful for anybody that watches me ranting on about stuff. But anyway, we'll try and get some pictures of the Jag exhaust. It's still not finished, but we'll get in there, but it's really awkward because I'm trying to cram so much into so little space. And that's what's made it most difficult. And at moments I've got the pipes going to the IRS at the back. Now they have to go through where the drive shafts come from the diff. They have to come over the top where they originally was routed, and where I've put the exhaust at the back, the silencer, if you want to call it a silencer. The design is really a fishtail, but the pipes come and it's up high, so I couldn't put it under the axle, which I do see some people do. They run them underneath. E-Type, they were run underneath, but it makes it quite low, and I didn't want the pipes, and then it meant bringing them back up and then into the exhaust system, silencer at the back. So it's better for me to run it over the axles where it originally did, and then into my silencer. So anyway, I'll show you what we've got here, and then we'll finish on that, I think. Okay, right, so this is going to be awkward. One, because trying to show you what I've done here, and me trying to point it out, which I can't do both because there's just no room. But I'll explain it, and then my son's going to bring the camera, so you'll have to forgive maybe any checking. We'll try edit any kind of checking out, but anyway. We'll have a good look down here so you can see what I've had to go around and to avoid, but we are close. I'm going to put some shielding up for those who are thinking it's going to burn the paint, blah, 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 or it's going to... I have some heavy duty engine mounting rubbers on this for marine engines, so they're quite big. They're not standard Jaguar ones. They are quite heavy duty, these engine mounting brackets, rubbers it's on. So there should be very little engine movement, but it's still rubber, so there is some movement allowed on it. So what we've got is, I've had to avoid the steering coupling, which goes from the steering column down to the rack, and you'll be able to see that that's quite close. The bulkhead where the steering column coupling comes and connects up to, that's quite close. But you know what they say, near misses don't count. So hopefully we've cleared that. These exhausts have to go over the engine mount in the first forward 3, and the rear 3 had to come forward and then down, obviously to avoid the footwell and the bulkhead at the back, but it was more of the footwell wall which I had to avoid, so everything had to be condensed in. When the exhaust is done and I get it all off, then I'll do a video and you'll be able to see fully what I have. I do have some pictures of when I've welded this, well, I say tacked the system together, so I'll put those in this video so you'll be able to see what they look like. And then when my son's brought the camera over and he's looked down here and you've got a good idea of the space I had to play with, then we'll oink the car up into the air and I'll show you what I've managed to do so far coming down to the back axles. And I've taken the diffuser off and remounted the exhaust at the back so that the pipes, when they come through the IRS, can come up to that. But that's up, but there's no pipe work there yet. That's what I'm working on now. So if my son comes now and has a look down here, and he can show you what we've got. So can you see really down into there, Leo? Can you come further over that way and look down? So you can see the steering column there, and the pipe works really close, but it's not close as to not touch. I can get nearly my finger in between, so I've probably got about 6 mil between the coupling and the pipe. But it is close, but it's all close. But that's what I had to work with this engine where I'd set it. If I'd have kept it further forward, I wouldn't have had this problem, but because I wanted to move the centre of gravity back, that caused me this problem. But we're in, so we'll work around it. So we'll oink it up in air now, and then we'll see what we've got. So here we are, as you can see where it all comes down from the engine in between the chassis, and how crunched it is together. And now I had to make one set slightly lower than the other set to get it all to come to where I wanted it underneath the car. So I have a bracket here, which hopefully you can see, which fastens this set of pipes, which is the rear 3 set, to the actual engine. And I'm going to have a bracket which fastens the forward 3 to the rear 3, to all those solid there. So then the whole thing any kind of vibrations, the engine moving side to side or anything like that, drive force or anything, they'll be fixed solid so that the pipes won't be taking any kind of like side movement stress work, because I don't want to crack the pipes. So there's going to be a bracket across there which will hold this solid to this, because that's not moving and that's moving. It is flexing on the spots and everything, but in real life it will still have some vibration movement in there. So anyway, so we've got those there, they come out here, and then we've got my flexi joints here to accommodate for engine movement against the rest of the exhaust. And then I've got my two 2-inch pipes. The 2-inch pipes are these, so 50mm pipes. So there's two of those, and that was by design from the mathematical equation which I'd worked out, and those two run to the back to here, which then they branch off. So here we are at the back, and as you can see, as I've brought the pipes away from each other, so they're coming to either side of the diff now. So I've had to come through the reinforcing frame that holds the lower part of the IRS in position, because this IRS is not rubber mounted and it doesn't have radius arms coming from the outer ends of the wishbone, bottom wishbones to the car body. That caused instability in the car, because obviously as the wheel went up, it's moving through a radius, so the whole axle would steer, literally steer. And there's a company in Murfield just down the road who specialise in Jaguars, and he's got a Series 1 XJ, and he's made it rigid, and he said it made phenomenally better the handling characteristics of the car, and he showed me it. So I've just gone a little bit further, made it look a bit fancy with a framework, which I think I've got a video of. But anyway, the pipes you can see are having to come through either side. I picked up on the original exhaust mountings which were there, and that's where I am with that, and as you can see, they're coming up to come over where the original pipes would have been routed with the XJs and XJSs and that. So what I'm going to do is I will supplement in all this I've done here. We'll put some pictures in so you can see better, because it really is hard trying to show you what's really been going on and the spaces and sort of things that I'm having to play with to get this thing in. And then we'll just go to the back here, and I'll show you quickly where they'll come through and the exhaust there. And like I say, we'll put pictures so you can see all this. Right, so in the back, so obviously IRS, and if anybody's not been watching the videos from early on in the beginning, this is a power lock XJS V12 back axle is this. It's tagged up. I'll take some pictures and you'll be able to see it, but this is a Speedo which I've got all the bits and pieces, but I have to calibrate. Hopefully my clock will work on the input signal, because I got that off an XJS Series 3, but the transmitter comes out of the gearbox, so I don't know if it's the same, but anyway, that's something I have to mess around with. But anyway, here's the axle, and you'll hopefully be able to see from this point here, the exhaust will come over the drive shaft through here, then it'll come down to here. Same at this side, it'll come through here and to here and mount to this. I was undecided whether I would put flexes here as well, because this is rubber mounted, but it's quite stiff because of the diffuser that's here. If it had been more loose, I would have had to have a wider gap around, and I didn't want that. So it is quite rigid, even though it is rubber mounted. So I'm undecided whether to get flexes like I did at the front to sit here, just so that the centre section of the pipes can move a little bit. But the thing is, the mount brackets in here, they're rubber mounted, but they're quite stiff as well. So there'll be very little movement, if any, when these centre section pipes get up to here. So I'm not decided fully whether I get flexes for this or not. I probably won't, because I don't think it's necessary, but I'll continue to think about it until I get there. But anyway, so it comes through there and it comes to here. And that's really it. This exhaust I made ages ago. This is based on the idea of a fishtail exhaust. So inside there, it's got a lot of packing. I have sections where it's meshed, it's a stainless steel mesh, and then solid sheet. And I created this fishtail design, and it's fully packed out. And then to repack it, just needs pot rivets drilling. Obviously it needs taking down, but pot rivets drilling, the packing, and it'd probably be lost or just squashed, repacking, then it all really needs reassembly, but it can be repacked, can that. And yeah, so that's where we are with the exhaust. So Paul, that's where we are with exhaust, mate, and anybody else that's interested. Let's go to the front and I'll finish off. So that's where we are. Slow, it always has been, and for all those who have been watching really from early on, I'm grateful for you. You're interested enough to keep going along with this. You've got patience of a saint, I think. My wife certainly has, but it's forward movement. All forward movement is movement forward, and so that's where I look at it. Every brick builds a wall. So anyway, thanks a lot again for everybody at watch. It has been a bit slow in coming, this video. It's just, I just don't feel, it's like I do a little bit here and then to try and make a video, and it's like, people, could you come to watch it? And I've said all this before. I just think it's not that interesting if you only go a small bit. And I try to make these in my small way interesting for you lot that's actually watching this. So thanks again for patience. And I know I said I was going to try and get one every week. Well, that's just at the moment, it's been an impossibility for more than one reason, and that's a good excuse. But anyway, it's going to be a time now before I do another one, because I'm going to Taiwan for 2 months. Family, a bit of family matter stuff. Unfortunately, it happened, and just for a bit of a break. Although a lot of my friends say, well, you have a good break anyway, because you'll do 3 days work and then you come down here, rest at time. But anyway, that's what it is. So there's a 2-month break before I get to come back and start doing anything. I am going to be doing some CAD work for the Land Rover while I'm over there, and I've got some other little, well, it's not so much a little project, I have another, it's a big project, but I can't talk about that. Maybe one day I might bring you in on that one, but at the moment there's nothing I can't do anything with that one. But I'm going to do some CAD work for the Land Rover, and hopefully when I get back that'll all be done and I can throw myself and my son at this. My son's now finished his schooling and he's done his exams, so maybe he might come down a bit more, and we can maybe get some more videos rolling, and maybe make them more interesting. But hopefully we'll get the impetus back and we can get throwing back at this and really get these things going. And there's other things I'm wanting to do as well, which I discussed quite a bit since about when I was going to move. We could be looking at, well, we've been looking at Scotland for a time, but anyway, we're back at looking at Scotland again. There's a couple of properties that have found interest, but we're waiting to see what the markings are doing with that. But anyway, thanks again for, like I say, your patience and your interest of what I'm trying to do here. I certainly enjoy doing these, and I hope you get something out of it. And lastly, Paul Harris, who does regularly put input onto the comments. Thank you. like I said, nearly done exhaust, mate. And you mentioned coming over, so if you ever manage to get over to Blighty, you're more than welcome to come over, whether it be here or in Scotland, I don't know, but all the time will tell there. But I'm always grateful for anybody, especially coming from Australia, man. You must be mad. But anyway, you all take it steady, everybody that's watching, especially with these times we're in. And yeah, I'll see you at next posting of the Land Rover 101 and the Jaguar Mark II, wide body 2-door coupe. Take it steady, everybody.